Welcome to Exhausted Reviews, enthusiast-focused car reviews. My name is EddieX, and today we are experiencing this 2003 996 generation Porsche 911 Turbo. I've spent time in 993s, 997s, 991s, 992s, but never a 996, so I am quite excited today to experience my first 996 generation 911. Porsche 911s have been known to hold value very well, oftentimes climb in value if it's a special model, and they also are quite expensive when new. But for a variety of reasons, the 996 generation hasn't really experienced that, which means this turbo is one of the best value 911 turbos you can buy. It's now a 20-something-year-old car, many generations old, but any 911 is a fantastic driving experience, especially compared to everything else during its era. So today, I am quite excited to experience this 996 Turbo. Let's talk about the powertrain, one of the most controversial aspects of the 996, because they went to a water-cooled flat six and said goodbye to the traditional air-cooled flat six, which was such a big deal at the time. Owners and purists were so upset about this change. But there is something important to know about the flat six found in the 996 Turbo specifically. This one has a Metzger engine, which draws lineage from the GT1 race car, and it's different from the flat six found in the regular 996s. It does not suffer from the catastrophic IMS bearing failure issue, so it's a much more solid, robust, and reliable engine. In terms of power, this 3.6-liter 24-valve turbocharged flat six makes 415 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. Now, there was an optional X50 package available, which upgraded the turbos, intercoolers, tune, exhaust. That would make 444 horsepower and 457 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 would happen in about 4 seconds, all-wheel drive, 6-speed manual transmission, or an optional 5-speed Tiptronic, which actually drew design from Mercedes, but that's one of the more awkward transmissions of the era. It's pre-PDK, so I would rather have a 996 with a proper manual transmission. Now, those performance figures and numbers may not sound too impressive, especially by today's standards, when we have things like a Kia EV6 GT, an electric Kia crossover making 576 horsepower to do 0 to 60 faster than this. Modern day 992 Turbo S is an absolute ballistic rocket ship, over 600 horsepower, 60 in the mid twos. But of the era, this would compare to something like a Ferrari 360, which had a 3.6-liter V8 making 400 horsepower and only 275 pound-feet of torque. A C5 Corvette Z06 had a LS6 5.7-liter V8 making 405 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. So compared to those cars, this thing was an absolute rocket ship. Let's talk about the exterior design, another aspect of the 996 that was extremely controversial, specifically the headlights here. Now, when it first came out, it did have this yellow-orange indicator part that made it look like a runny egg or a fried egg. That's what people called it, and people were quite upset about that. I think it's because Porsche doesn't really evolve or change that aspect of their styling. It's always this kind of circular oval shape, and it is a very iconic and identifiable part of the design. But if for every generation there were more changes, maybe people would have been more receptive to it, because the 996 is really the only one that deviated in that headlight shape. But when it's the full clear lens like this, I don't mind the looks at all, especially on a spec like this. This is Guards Red with the factory aero kit on these really cool gold BBS wheels, and the overall shape and proportions is immediately identifiable as a 911 with the rear engine layout. This is also a longer wheelbase than a 993. It's got the widened treatment with the intakes here for the turbo model and a active rear wing. Another interesting thing to note is the doors, fenders, hood, and a couple other components are shared with the Boxster. So another theory is possibly people didn't love the styling because they felt like it was being diluted, sharing parts and design elements with the baby Boxster model. Regardless, I think the 996 is aging quite well and definitely identifiable as a 911. All right, on the inside, another aspect of the 996 that was a little bit controversial. People said it felt too cheap, it had too much plastic. I'll be honest, the first time I got into this car, I was like, wow, this is actually quite nice. This one here is finished in natural brown leather, covering all sorts of surfaces. We have the Guards Red painted center tunnel here and the seat backs. The steering wheel is just a steering wheel. It's not covered in a bunch of buttons, dials, and toggles. We have the ignition on the left-hand side, a typical Porsche thing. The 5 circular gauges in the middle have been kind of squashed together. They're nested, so that is another change there. And of course, we have buttons and things that are kind of showing the age with CD player. But compared to other cars of this generation, the Ferrari 360, C5 Corvette, this thing is light years ahead in my opinion. This is a 20-something-year-old car with nearly 50,000 miles on it, and it's still quite nice. The leather is wearing well. We've got Alcantara headliner. This one does have a glove box. The initial 996s did not come with a glove box, and we do have rear seats, but they're not really usable for adults or people with legs, but that's a typical Porsche thing. But I gotta say, this interior is actually quite nice. And with that, let's go for a drive first with the owner, Alec. We're gonna chat about what it's been like to own a 996, and then I'm gonna drive it. We are in the car with the owner, Alec. Thank you for bringing the car out today.
Thanks for having us.
Very excited. How has it been like to own a 996 turbo?
You know, it's every 90s kid's dream, I would say. Yeah, this was the supercar killer when I was growing up. So some of my earliest memories are seeing it in like Gone in 60 Seconds. Obviously the car, the 996 in the intro of Gone in 60 Seconds is not a turbo, but still the fried egg headlights and all that, same vibes, you know.
So what made you, was it that the main reason that made you pick it? Because obviously this is one of the more controversial, less loved of the 911s. Why a 996 gen?
You know what's funny? So obviously I graduated high school in 2013. Peak Porsche, peak car 911 at the time was the 997.
Yep.
And so growing up, you know, I actually really liked the 997 so much more. That was the car my friends and I, when we were 16, we were seeing at the dealers, you know. So I have a photo of my buddy and I sitting in a 997.2 GT2 RS at the Penske dealer in Scottsdale. I think we were probably like 17, and I'm surprised they let us sit in it. Nobody said a word to us. But from then on, I really wanted a 997. And at the time, going to the car shows around town, we had made friends with a guy that had a 997 turbo.
Okay.
And he had done, you know, bunch of bolt-ons. I think even had aftermarket turbos. And so ripping in that car was really what solidified kind of having a turbo for me. Obviously, like, I'm into driver's cars. And so like a GT3 or something like that would have been, you'd think, be more along the lines of something
with the turbo.
Like. But there's something about the raw power of the turbo, you know, torque and all that.
Yes.
You know, you don't get out of the GT cars.
Yep.
Unless it's a GT2, of course, but that's a little
Slightly
out of
different.
my pay grade. Yeah. So I originally had thought, you know, for the longest time, 997 turbo. And then, you know, being a big BMW guy over the years, I've had almost every M3.
Okay.
So E36. I've had a bunch of E9Xs. Right now I have an F80 also. And so every BMW guy's natural transition,
as they graduate,
you graduate into a 911, and so now is kind of my time. And so here we are.
How did you end up with a 996 specifically, though?
You know, so with the way the market's going right now, I you know, I started looking at 997s actually, and I noticed that there was something in the back of my mind saying, is this the car you really want?
Okay.
You know, so I think over time, obviously it's been, you know, 10 or 15 so years since the 997s were in dealers. They've aged. And in my opinion, I don't think they aged that well.
Okay.
So I honestly think the 996 with the fried egg headlights just looks so much more 2000s. I don't know. It's
of the era.
It's the era for me.
Okay.
So I started looking at 996s, and of course the price point made it almost a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's the value turbo.
Yeah. It's
if
bang
you
for your
want
buck
a
right
911 turbo manual, like the bang for your buck is 100%, because 993s are just out of reality at this point.
Well, and it's funny because 10, 15, 20 years ago, the 993s, same thing. They, at one point, they were not very much liked by enthusiasts. And obviously you see how the trend's taken off there. I think 996s are starting to become that way.
They're starting to climb a little bit.
Yeah. So I've even seen things from like Doug DeMuro saying, oh, you know, 996 is the one to watch out for over the next few years.
But you have to get a turbo because you don't want IMS bearing failure.
Right. So that's another thing. The C2s and C4s have the catastrophic IMS bearing failures and bore scoring issues as well. And so that wasn't really something I'm looking.
I don't think anybody wants to deal with.
Looking to get involved with really. And you know, these Mezger engines derived from the GT1 cars are incredible. And so, you know, reading up on the reliability of these motors alone was kind of what really solidified it for me.
So you love this thing. How many miles have you put on it?
I love this car. I've put, you know, probably 1,600 or so miles. Okay. I've had it for 6 months roughly. So I bought it in October actually.
Oh, so recent acquisition.
Yes, bought it in October, bone stock. Out of Huntington Beach, California. So not being a far trek for us here in Arizona, you know, I jumped on it as soon as I could. The car had 47,000 miles on it when I bought it.
It's a nice spec. So it's guards red over this natural tan.
Natural brown, yes. So guards red over natural brown. It's a factory aero kit car. Factory painted seat backs, painted center console. Yeah, I don't know. Whoever ordered this car knew they did an incredible job.
It also was in great condition. Like this interior, people hated on it.
Right.
But like,
you know, I had heard things. Actually, this is the first 911 I've really experienced as far as like, you know, really being involved in the car. And so I had heard really negative things about the interior quality in these 996s. And you know, I've got to say it's pretty surprisingly nice.
For the era,
Alcantara headliner. Yeah.
Leather on the A-pillars.
Yeah, A-pillars are wrapped in leather. It's not a plastic.
Yeah.
Even the door handles are relatively nice.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good interior and it's aging pretty well. Like, not bad. What's your favorite part of owning a 996 turbo?
Oh man, you know, I gotta say, it's the vibes. So yeah, I mean, I love driving drivers' cars. So just being behind the wheel of this car is just something special for me. Growing up, my dad would tell me stories of him partying in the 80s. He grew up in Southern California, partying in Newport Beach, and his roommate at the time was an orthodontist. His name's Dr. Bill, and he had a 930 turbo in guards red. And so growing up, you know, my dad would tell me, you know, back in the day when I was, you know, I partied on the beach and we cruised around in the Porsche and handed out party flyers, and it was the best time of my life. And so, you know, buying this, I didn't really expect to get this spec, but I ended up with a guards red car. And I had my dad over at Christmas time, and I was showing him my wheels. I got these gold the BBS E88s, and he was telling me that Dr. Bill actually had gold E88s on his 930 turbo as well.
That's
so
a funny
it looks like we've come full circle.
Is there anything you don't like about the car? I always love asking this question. What do you hate about your car?
I'm trying to think what I don't like about it. You know, I gotta say it. I was talking to you about it earlier, but these 996s, since they're aging, this car being a 2003, right? It's 22 years old now. It's 2025. The foam.
You mentioned that.
Yes, the foam around the air vents, you know, they use to seal the air from escaping through the ducting. Starts to crumble in these cars with age, and so if you turn the air conditioning on high blast, every now and then you'll get AC foam blowing out. So when I first bought the car, I didn't really think about it.
Okay.
But driving it back home from California, it hit me because I had remembered seeing somebody posting about it. I'm in a few Facebook groups, I like to do my research. And so I had seen somebody post about it, and I didn't think anything of it until it happened to me.
Aging, crumbling foam.
Yes. Now, it's not
if that's the worst thing about it, that's not a bad thing at all.
No,
right?
I mean, I just pick up little foam off the carpet.
Yeah, it's an older car. It's kind of 20-something years old. When do cars qualify for classic plates, right? We're getting close to that. Is it 25 years or something?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I run classic plates on my E36 M3, actually. It's kind of funny because when I look at the car, it doesn't feel like it's that old.
Exactly.
But then when you think about how old a 20-year-old or 25-year-old car actually is, it slows.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, I'm thinking like the Chevelle my dad had
like a
when I was
70s or 80s or
yes,
like
exactly.
That's what is a classic car to me, not
right.
early 2000s.
Not the cars that
like,
were
what?
new when I was a kid 20 years ago, because it makes me feel old.
So you're loving a 996. This is my first time ever driving a 996 today.
Yeah,
I'm excited to try it out and see what it's like. Keeper?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely?
Absolutely. It's funny, I bought it bone stock, and me being myself, I couldn't leave it untouched.
I like how self-aware you are, me being myself.
Well,
BBS
so
immediately.
I feel like Porsche did a really good job of making comfy cars in the 2000s, So, and the turbo especially, geared towards the higher up businessman, I would say, looking for comfort but also speed, right? And so the suspension was very, very soft. Great on a road trip or great on a road like this where it's a little bumpy. But in corners and things like that, it was almost floaty.
Okay.
Not necessarily not like it didn't give confidence back or anything like that, but it was just a little too much for me.
Okay.
So I did some KW coilovers, KW V3s. I like to have the adjustability.
Yeah.
And then obviously paired that with the wheels and a good tire.
Yeah. And then you're good with that.
Yeah, I think yes. I'd like to do like a tune maybe, an exhaust. I like to hear the car, but this car is one that I think I'll keep nice or as OEM plus as I can.
Yeah.
Because like my E36 M3, it's like a never-ending spiral of.
Well, you're doing an S54 swap, right?
S54 6-speed.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so that'll be a really fun car, and that'll be my kind of fix of rowdiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is your classy but still
this is my
fantastic
classy,
driving.
Take my wife and her dog to Cars and Coffee.
Yes.
But also rip a mountain road kind of thing here and there.
I went to 424 this morning, and there were 3 996s, 996 turbos.
So yeah, 424 is a great show in town. And as of recently, I believe there are a lot more 996s in town. So I picked up mine in October, and actually I went to 424 not this last weekend, but the weekend before, and I ran into another gentleman. He had almost an orange 996 turbo. I don't remember the color. It's a pretty rare color, but forgive me for anyways.
You don't know all the Porsche paint scheme names,
right.
the
PTS. I don't know, PTS database in my head. So anyways, he bought his car fairly recently as well. I want to say out of California also. And so I've been seeing him there. And then I noticed that there might be like another Guards Red.
Another Guards Red on HREs. That one was there today.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, is that Alex? Nope, wrong wheels.
Yeah. So it looks like there's a few of them in town. I had a buddy text me the other day saying, hey, I just saw you drive by. And I said, where? And he goes, some bar in Scottsdale or something. I said, oh, I'm at home. I live in...
So unless somebody stole your car, you just have a twin.
Yeah. I said, oh, it must have been my twin.
Yeah.
He's got good taste.
Absolutely. Well, congrats on the recent purchase. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
It looks very, very nice. I am looking forward to driving it now. So we're going to swap seats and take this thing for a spin. It is certainly very quiet. That is just a thing Porsche turbos typically always are like. They just don't make that much noise. Ooh, 991 3RS going by. It just sounds like a kind of like a vacuum cleaner, but it's a fast vacuum cleaner. They'll never be able to sound like a GT3 or a GT3 RS. That is just the nature of a 911 turbo. Another initial impression is the shifter throw is very long, a lot longer than I expected. It certainly feels quick and strong, but manageable. Very, very much manageable. And actually surprisingly linear. I was expecting maybe to feel a little bit more turbo lag. I mean, older car, older technology generation, but very manageable power and torque, and it feels quicker than, for example, the 993 C4S that I've spent a good amount of time with. That was a really fun driving experience, and one of the things I liked about it was it didn't make a ton of power, so you could run through 3 or 4 gears, and you weren't doing some ridiculous over-the-top speed where you might get in some trouble, and you could enjoy the car. But when you step up into a turbo model, of course it's going to make more power than a naturally aspirated Carrera version of whatever generation 911. Ergonomics-wise, I do wish I could adjust the steering wheel up a bit. It just telescopes in and out. I can't angle it up, so it kind of feels like it's in between my knees. But I was able to adjust the seat to be comfortable enough here at 6'3". Visibility is fantastic out the front, out the back. That is a typical 911 thing. And it's also very refreshing to just get in a car and drive. I don't have a bunch of different modes and suspension things and sport mode and different things to control and change. We do have PSM though, so an early stability management system. Porsche starting to introduce all their acronyms. These days there are so many, PASM and this and this and that, right? So we do have stability management, which is able to use sensors to determine speed and yaw and acceleration, all these things to determine if it needs to help you bring your car in from understeer or handle oversteer by using the brakes and or engine power. So an early stability system is available here in the 996, but it is a much more simple time where we're just the driver, twin turbo flat six all the way back there, a 6-speed manual, an all-wheel drive system that can send up to 40% of the power to the front to help put it down, but it is a much more rear bias system. But that is still one of the nice things about getting a turbo model, because you do have that all-wheel drive grip and traction. Let's see, going through some turns, how does this feel? So we do have aftermarket wheels, different tires, stickier tires, and a aftermarket suspension system. So this is not exactly how it came from the factory per se, but these are all OEM plus mods, I would say, that improve it, right? Lightweight forged wheels, better modern tires, and a pretty good suspension system, all right? This is also a more manageable size. 911s are getting bigger and bigger. That is a common complaint. The capabilities are getting higher and higher, but they definitely feel bigger and bigger. Also, ooh, hydraulic steering, this old steering. The steering wheel, it does feel larger diameter, but some nice feedback. This thing is fun through the turns. Not too much power. I mean, honestly, by the time we got to about the 991 Turbo S, those things are so stupendously quick. The 992 is go to jail kind of fast at all speeds, in all situations. It's such a good car. This one still feels like you want to work for it, right? It's more engaging, more analog in that way, but still has enough power to be fun and quick. Yeah, this is still plenty enough power to get yourself into a bit of trouble. This is the shifter throw. The shifter throw is a lot longer than I expected. But typical Porsche experience, right? You get in and you're just comfortable immediately. Whee! This is a driver's car. This is a driver's 911. Let's talk about the value. This being a turbo means it's one of the more expensive 911s. When it was new, it was probably $110,000, $130,000. This one may have been even more expensive because of the options. But the 996 has not seen the appreciation, the value increase that some other 911 generations have seen. Take a look at 993s. They have just skyrocketed out of reality. They are so expensive now. What Porsches typically do, especially 911s and special models, is they will depreciate a little bit and they pretty quickly hit their bottom, and then they just start climbing and they never come back. 993s, air-cooled Porsches, select special 997s, they're not going to depreciate anymore. They're only going to go up. But the 996 hasn't seen as much of that. Now, these prices have started to climb a bit. 5 years ago, they were an even better value, right? Even crazier value argument. These days, a really clean 996 turbo, especially manual with the X50 in good condition, I see them maybe around $100,000, that price point. The bottom of the market, higher mile one, maybe a Tiptronic, which is not as desirable of a transmission choice compared to the manual, maybe 40 to 50 grand, maybe history, higher miles there. But a nice, good, clean example would be $60,000 to $70,000. Honestly, for a driver's 996 one that you can put some miles on, maybe modify, drive it and enjoy, that's a pretty good value proposition. Again, 993s are ridiculously expensive now. As the last of the air-cooled generation, those are never going to come down, which makes me a little bit sad. I do really like the 993. I spent some time with a C4S, and I went to go look at them for sale, and I'm like, oh, these are all six figures. Never mind. There goes my dream of owning an older 911, specifically a 993. 997s are newer, maybe a wider appeal, but at the same time, they're going to be a bit more expensive. Yeah, they have more modernness to it, but the 996 still has its unique touch. It fits in nicely there, and because of some of those controversial things that hurt its popularity when it first came out, the values haven't skyrocketed, but they are starting to climb, and I think as time goes on, we're going to gain an appreciation for these cars as the newer versions of 911s are going hybridized, digitized, everything. 996, 997, we're going to want these as driver's cars. It's just simple. You just get in and drive and you enjoy. It's just you, the engine, and go. Have fun in this car. The curb weight, 3,400, 3,600 pounds, is manageable. It's a nice level of power. If you want a bit more, tune it. You can upgrade the turbos, get an X50 package, exhaust, tweak things a little bit. It doesn't need 700 horsepower to be fun and engaging. And I really do think a lot of those like controversies and the problems and the downsides of the 996 that did hurt its valuation, I think can be dispelled with this car. Headlights, I don't mind it. The styling, right? Maybe it's just growing on me over time. It is way better without the little yellow insert on the corner, right? The indicator. If it's full clear lens, I think it looks so much better. Sometimes people who are really picky about it, I think they can get like a vinyl kit to cover it, but that's almost taken away the uniqueness of the 996 because it is the kind of the ugly duckling of the family, right? But that makes it different. It stands out from the rest of the 997s and 993s and every other Porsche, which just looks like the same thing over and over. So this one's slightly different, but still very similar. The water-cooled engine, okay, that's a change, but Porsche just stuck with that forever now. We're never getting air-cooled one again from Porsche. So that change, yeah, this is the generation where it happened, but going forward now, looking back at it, big deal. Reliability concerns, get yourself a turbo and you're not going to have to deal with the IMS bearing nightmare, right? Where it can literally just catastrophically explode, right? It's not explode, but it's not good for your engine. This one doesn't have that thing. The Metzger is just solid. This is a very well-known engine. There are some little issues I remember reading about. Coolant lines are a common weak point, so you want to get that addressed. What else is it? Hydraulic wing can go wrong. I've also saw sometimes people have boost leak issues with these things, but overall it seems to be a very solid vehicle, and it doesn't have a lot of those fancy systems that as we get into newer cars, there's more things to possibly go wrong. This is a analog driver's 911 turbo to get in and just have fun. So should you buy one? If you want one to drive and enjoy, I would. It's actually, I don't mind the interior too. Yeah, this is a lot of plastic, a lot of buttons. It's a CD player. It's actually funny. I opened up the center console here and the owner, Alec, has a bunch of CDs put in here, which is funny. Childhood memories for me. This is a enjoyable canyon car. You could daily it, do road trips. owner's planning on taking it to car shows. I think it's going to Air and Water out in California. And I know it doesn't have those crazy horsepower figures, but it's still quick. Woo! I think the 996 Turbo was unfairly hated upon. It works out for us enthusiasts who want to buy one to drive and enjoy, right? If you're not one of those peak Porsche purists where nothing would please you unless it was the exact same thing, copy and pasted over and over again, this is the option. You could get that 911 experience. It is a proper 911, and it's not insanely expensive. I want to try more 996 generation cars now. They made a GT3. There was a 3RS, but we did not get that in America. And there was the GT2 Widowmaker, right? I imagine that probably would have been pretty intense, especially in this era. But definitely impressed driving the 996. The mods on this one are very cool. The spec is extremely nice. It is in pristine condition. Honestly, so impressed. I do hear a couple squeaks and rattles and things, but it's a 20-year-old car, right? Nothing terribly catastrophic. Panel fitment still seems to be pretty good. Exterior is in fantastic condition, like really nice. And the driving experience has also been very enjoyable. You get comfortable very quickly. Hop in, feel a couple things out, and then you're ready to go have some fun. It does still have that boosty fun 911 Turbo. What an enjoyable day with the 996. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Thanks for watching.